After months of negotiations, Democrats in Washington say they are one step closer to agreement on a sweeping proposal that would touch education, health care, climate change, and more. While a number of specifics are still unresolved, President Biden is touting the progress made. Yamiche Alcindor begins our coverage.
It's a good day.
This morning on Capitol Hill, an optimistic and determined President Biden. With him, a $1.75 trillion framework for his social policy plan. After weeks of negotiations, he said he was confident he could unite his party around the plan, which aims to make massive changes to healthcare and childcare and to rewrite the tax code. If passed, the plan would be the largest investment in climate change in U.S. history. Back at the White House, he called the framework historic and overdue.
This agenda, the agenda that's in these bills, is what 81 million Americans voted for.
The outline is the result of hours of closed-door meetings, hand-wringing, and public feuding between moderate and progressive Democrats. It's one of the most challenging efforts of President Biden's long legislative history.
No one got everything they wanted, including me. But that's what compromise is. That's consensus. And that's what I ran on.
That framework includes $550 billion for universal pre-K, child care, and elder care, $200 billion to extend the child tax credit through 2022. On climate change, there's $555 billion for investments in clean energy. And on health care, $165 billion to strengthen and expand the Affordable Care Act and add hearing coverage for those on Medicare. The White House says all of this is paid for by nearly $2 trillion in tax increases on corporations and the wealthiest Americans.
Collectively, we are optimistic about the framework that is currently being put forth. I think there's a lot of buy-in.
House progressives like Congresswoman Ilhan Omar said they are enthusiastically, unanimously behind what the president proposed and ready to vote on a resolution endorsing it.
There are too many no votes for the bill to pass today.
But Progressive Chair Pramila Jayapal said they were not ready to pass the bipartisan infrastructure deal today, potentially delaying a vote on roughly $1 trillion for roads, bridges, and railways that cleared the Senate in August.
Let's not just keep having postponements.
And pushing back on House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who said today's progress should be enough.
For those who said, I want to see text, the text is there for you to review, for you to complain about, for you to add to, for subtract from, whatever it is.
But Jayapal did give in on Progressive's original stance that the two bills need to be passed simultaneously. She is now signaling an infrastructure vote could come as soon as this weekend, trusting the larger package would follow.
We're going to trust the president on the Senate vote. And we're going to trust our Senate colleagues, all of them, all 50 of them, on the Senate vote.
Those senators include Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, who pushed to decrease the package from its original $3.5 trillion price tag. Still, neither of them have announced whether they support the Biden framework. Meanwhile, the GOP stance is clear.
People shouldn't vote for it.
On both sides of the Capitol, Republicans are uniformly opposed.
It's one vision of the future, all right, but it's not one that Americans want. And it's one that Senate Republicans will fight every step of the way.
As Democrats vowed to work through the weekend to iron out more details, President Biden flew to Europe. At the Vatican, he is planning to meet with Pope Francis. Later in Rome, he'll meet with a group of 20 world leaders. Then in Scotland, he'll participate in a pivotal climate summit, now with this framework to promote.
And Yamiche joins me now, along with our congressional correspondent, Lisa Desjardins. So hello to both of you. I'm going to turn to you first, Yamiche. The president is saying that he's confident that he's going to be able to get this framework through, that he's got the votes. What is the White House thinking on this? What is their strategy here? Okay, I'm told we may have lost Yamiche's earpiece for just a minute. We're going to come right back to her. But Lisa, let me come to you. We heard in Yamiche's reporting what's the story on the infrastructure vote, and you have some late-breaking information.
There is news just in the past couple of minutes. While Speaker Pelosi had told her caucus even just this morning that she wanted to vote tonight on that infrastructure bill that already passed the Senate, I can now report that that vote will not happen tonight. Instead, the House will vote on a short-term extension of highway funding that was in the infrastructure bill. But to keep that highway funding going, they now need a short-term patch. That vote will happen shortly. And more than that, Judy, the House is leaving for the weekend. There will not be the weekend vote that we heard in Yamish's piece that was potentially in theory. And I want to go over exactly why. Let's talk about where we stand on everything right now to help people understand the situation. First, right now, the House has, as Yamish was reporting, a first draft, let's call it that, of the Build Back Better vote. The text, we saw that today, but it is just a first draft. The issue, the Senate is still negotiating. There are many issues still on the table for them, unclosed. So progressives are waiting exactly for a Senate guarantee to try and figure out if Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema will back this version of the bill. After they get that kind of guarantee, progressives say they will support the infrastructure bill as well. You know, as she reported, the progressives are now saying that those bills are still linked together, but they've made it a little bit easier. They're not going to wait for the Senate to pass the Build Back Better bill. They're saying maybe the House can pass it first and then we'll be okay. They put out that statement shortly. But basically, we're waiting for the Senate to kind of give a guarantee to House progressives on what it wants to do.
Well, clearly there's been some kind of a slowdown. We have Yamish now. Yamish, what is the White House thinking on this? The president expressing confidence. What is that based on? What are you hearing?
Well, this is really President Biden saying it is time for Democrats to get together. It is time for Democrats to make a deal and vote. This is really a political calculation on the part of the president and in some ways a political risk. The White House put this framework out without actually securing whether or not senators, especially Senators Manchin and Sinema, as well as House progressives, were actually going to back this framework and vote for it. There was a sense, and White House officials were telling me all morning, that they believe the president, as well as this framework, would earn the vote of the House and the Senate. But it really was a calculation on the part of the president to say, I'm going to put out the ideas after talking to people for weeks. And I think that this is what the caucus can get behind. The other thing to note is that the president, when he went to Capitol Hill today, he went with a clear message. And that message was, it's not hyperbole to think that our majorities, Democrats' majorities in the House and the Senate, as well as his own presidency, the future of it, will be determined by what happens in the next week. That is really, really extraordinary language by President Biden, because he's saying essentially that his legacy and his ability to be able to be reelected and the ability for Democrats all over the country to be elected really is riding on this idea of whether or not they can get these infrastructure bills through Congress. So that is really, in some ways, the White House thinking here. The president is confident because he says at the end of the day, he's the leader of the party. And after having all these discussions, he hopes that people in the party will be able to trust him and be able to vote for these bills.
So with these delays, Lisa, what is known about what is still not resolved here?
There's a lot in the air. One part of this bill is immigration. The president did include money in the framework for a potential immigration reform for potentially millions of green cards, but we're not counting that in the calculation of how big the bill is because we don't know if that will pass muster in the Senate. Also, we know negotiations continuing even on family leave. I talked to Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who's working on that, just before I sat down with you. She said she just talked to Joe Manchin, who's maybe opening into some other creative ideas. Prescription drugs, same situation. There are talks about some creative ideas. Those are two big areas that are not in the bill now, but Senate Democrats are trying to get them back in. And I think that one other thing I want to talk about is the taxes. Here's where we are. I know this is a lot of information for people, but it's also important. This is what's been agreed to, 15% corporate minimum tax. Now, what's in flux? The millionaire surtax, because again, Joe Manchin, the name we keep hearing, has a new idea from this morning, a 15% patriotic tax that would be on the wealthy. That's floating around. I guess this is all to say that there are just too many things, big ideas, complicated ideas that have not been pinned down yet. So it's no wonder that progressives are not quite ready to move yet. There's a lot in the air.
And just finally, to pick up on that, Yamish, given that progressive don't seem to be getting all that they wanted by a long shot, how is the White House, how's President Biden defending what he's apparently agreeing to?
Well, before President Biden flew off to Europe, which is where he's on his way to now, he spoke about this issue specifically in the East Room of the White House. And he said not everyone got what they wanted. And he was really talking to House progressives because a lot of this bill, it really is the vision of Senator Joe Manchin, because he was the one who in some ways had a lot of the power in these negotiations. So when you think about what House progressives gave up and what the president gave up, it's 2 years free community college. It's also paid family leave. And when you think about what the president is really saying to his party here, he's saying there are other times that we can get what we want. So he has made the commitment to other lawmakers as well as to activists to say, we won't get it in this bill, but we might be able to get it later on. I should tell you, I spoke to an activist named Jocelyn Fry. She's the incoming president of the National Partnership for Families and Women. And essentially, it's a large group that advocates for paid family leave. And she said it was disheartening and unconscionable that paid family leave wasn't in this bill, because so much of what working women need in this country is paid family leave. It's time to be able to take care of their families. And the fact that the United States stands out among all sorts of other countries around the world as not having that for our citizens is something that advocates are really, really upset about. And she was really upset about it, the incoming president. That being said, the president is essentially saying, trust me on this, I will be able to get it down the line.
Well, the president's on an airplane, the clock is ticking, the calendar pages are turning, and the hard work continues. Lisa Desjardins, Yamiche Alcindor, thank you both.